Hey y'all, it's your friend D, and in today's video, I'm kind of sort of working on a village. I'm building a house, but it is an experimental house. I've been putting off making houses for the village for well over a year now because I can't decide on a design, and I have a tendency to make my village pieces larger than what I originally planned. So I'm hoping with this video, I'll be able to come up with a design that will work for all of the houses, but I can change them up to make each house unique. I'm also going to be experimenting with making paperboard look like aged wood. And if it doesn't work out, the good thing is this is an experiment and I plan to repaint this house anyway in the future, so it's not a big loss if it doesn't work. And the materials I'm going to use to make this house are foam board, paperboard, paint, hot glue, and Mod Podge. I was able to cut all of my pieces using 2 sheets of foam board from the Dollar Tree, and the first piece is the largest piece that you'll have to cut. It is 29 3/4. That's the entire length of one piece of foam board, and it's 13 inches in height. From here, I did make my markings where I'm going to fold my walls. Ignore the center part where I have the door and the windows. I'll get to that later. But I made my markings where I'm going to score my walls and they'll fold. So I wrote the measurements on a piece of paper. I figured that would be easier for you guys to see. My first score line is 4 inches over from the left, and then another line 12 inches over, then 4 inches, and then the leftover piece of 9 3/4 inch. And on all of these, I just scored the foam board. So I can fold on all of these lines like this, and that'll give us a box. Now this was kind of short because I need this last piece to be 12 inches. So I did cut out an extra piece of the leftover foam board, and this is 13 inches by 3 1/4. And that's going to give me a little bit of a hangover so I can glue this piece onto this one. And once we start working with the foam board, you'll see how I do that. The next 2 pieces I cut were these 2 triangles for the roof. Each triangle is 12 inches across the base, and from the center highest point is 2 inches down to the bottom. The next 2 pieces are both cut to 12.5 inches by 8 inches. One will be the porch and the floor to the interior of the house, and the other one will serve as the base to the roof. 2 pieces of foam board cut to 8 1/4 inches by 6 1/4 inches. And these 2 are going to be part of the roof. Next, I have several strips of foam board, all cut to a 1/2 inch wide, but there are different lengths. I have 4 strips that are 13 inches long and a 1/2 inch wide, 8 strips that are cut to 6 inches long and a 1/2 inch wide, and 4 strips that are cut to 3 1/2 inches long by a 1/2 inch wide. Before we start gluing anything together, I do need to work on my windows and my doors, and I know you guys like exact measurements, so I'm going to try my best here. And I've already told you where we're going to score to fold, so I'm just going to fold this over so it's out of the way. And we're only dealing with the portion that's going to be the front. And just so you guys know, this is the far left side of the poster board. I came over 4 inches, and that's where we scored. So that folds over, and this 12-inch section is going to be the front of the house. For my windows, I measured up 6 inches from the base of the foam board, and that gave me my bottom line. And then I measured over from my fold 1 inch. That gave me the starting point on this corner. And starting in this corner, I just drew a rectangle that was 5 1/2 inches by 1 1/2 inch. And I did the exact same thing on this side for the window. I measured up 6 inches from the bottom, from the fold over 1 inch. That gave me my starting point. And then I just drew my 5 1/2 inches by 1 1/2 inch window. For my door, I wanted it in the center, and that was pretty easy to find. I just measured over 4 inches from this fold and 4 inches from that fold. And then I drew a triangle that was 12 inches by 4 inches. And I did start the rectangle for my door all the way down at the bottom. And at the top of the door should be an extra inch of foam board. I have both windows completely cut out. And I was going to completely remove the door and work on it separately and reattach it with these little door hinges. But then I thought not all of you guys will have these. So I decided to just score it on one side instead. So I cut along this side of the door and at the top, and on this side I just scored it so it's still attached on the back side by the paper, and it can open and close freely. This is the back side of the door, and you can see it's still attached here by the paper, and it can open and close, so that won't be a problem. And you can see right here I almost cut through, but I did something on the other side that reminded me to stop. If you're going to do this method, I would definitely recommend you leave yourself little notes. I probably should have wrote these a little bit bigger. I wrote cut on this side, and there's another one down below, cut across here, and then I just wrote score on this side. I probably should have wrote it a little bit higher and bigger because I did start cutting here, and then when I got down to the word, I realized I needed to stop. So yeah, just make some little notes for yourself, and that will prevent you from cutting the door completely off. Now we can start gluing on some of the other foam board pieces. So I'm going to take my 13 inches by 3 1/4 inches that I'm going to glue to this side to extend it. Now I did make this piece bigger than what I needed, so I have an extra inch that I'm working with, and I'm going to show you why I needed that extra inch. So on one of the sides that's 13 inches long, I peeled my paper over to 1 inch. I marked it on the top side of the paper, and that exposes the foam inside. I took my X-Acto knife and I very carefully scored along that foam, so I should be able to snap it apart. And now that it's coming apart, I should be able to peel it off of the back piece of paper. Now that I have that foam board removed, I can use this paper and a little glue to attach it to my shorter side. So I'll just put it like this and glue the paper down on both sides. Here's that extra piece glued on, and it looks the same on the other side. I'm not worried about it looking perfect because this will be covered up. While I can still lay the walls flat on my table, I'm going to go ahead and glue my scrapbook paper onto the inside of the house. I think I left off where I was gluing the scrapbook paper onto the house. It's been about a week since I last worked on this. I got sick. I think the last day I touched this was Thursday, and today is the following Wednesday. My next step is to cover the entire exterior with paperboard and to cover the front and back of the door with paperboard. To give the front and back door some dimension, I cut out 6 pieces of paperboard to 12 inches by 4 inches. I'm going to use 3 pieces on the front and 3 pieces on the back. And it should fit like this and cover the front and the back door. So I'm going to show you exactly the measurements I used to get this piece. So like I said previously, each side of the door is going to be covered in 3 pieces of paperboard, and I left 1 piece of the 12 by 4 paperboard intact. The other 2 I glued together, and then I cut out my design. I just made mine really simple, and I left myself a 1/2 inch border all the way around. And then from there I cut out these rectangles that are 5 1/4 inches tall by 1 1/4 inch across. Now all I have to do is glue the piece with the cutouts on it onto the piece that is fully intact, and that will act as the cover for the door, and I'll make a second one to go on the back of the door. While the glue on the door is drying, I'm going to show you what I'm covering the outside of the house with, and it's just more paperboard, and I'm going to use a technique that I saw Queen City Mini do, and I've tried this before and it came out okay, but I want to see if I could get a little bit better at this technique. My first step was to draw my lines on my paperboard, and I made mine 1 inch apart, and then I went over those lines with an X-Acto knife and just scored them. After I scored with the X-Acto knife, I did try to go back and deepen the lines with this tool I found at the Dollar Tree, and I used this last time, and I found that it didn't deepen the lines as much as I would like. So I just switched to using a dull pencil, and that kind of gave me more of what I was looking for in this. So I was able to really get those lines kind of deep. So I'm hoping they'll show up a little bit more after I start painting them. I have all of the paperboard glued in place on this piece, and while I can still lay it flat, I am going to go ahead and glue in my windows. So I'm using some plastic as my window pane, and I'm just going to glue that in place like this. And to have the divider of the window panes, I'm not sure what this part is called, I'm just going to use some strips of paper. I have the plastic in place in the windows and my paper strips. Now I'm going to frame out the window and the door. I'm using some strips of paperboard for the frames, and this thinner one is 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to frame the windows with that. And for the door, I'm going to use a strip that is 1/2 inch wide to frame out the front door. And for the inside of the house, I'm going to frame the windows and doors with some leftover foam board. I'm going to cut some strips that are 1/4 of an inch wide for the windows and 1/2 inch wide for the door. Here's what the paperboard trim looks like on the outside. It's just very simple. And I have it around the door as well. And here's what the inside looks like with the foam board trim around the windows and the door. Next, I'm going to attach my doorknobs, and I made these very simple. I just used 2 layers of paperboard glued together, and I cut it. I kind of eyeballed the measurements on this, but it is about 1 inch in height and just under 1/2 inch in width. And then I just notched in, using my X-Acto knife, a little keyhole and went over that with my pencil to kind of deepen it in. And for my knob, I'm using 2 pieces of foam board. So I cut one in kind of a circle as good as I could get it. And I'm using a smaller piece underneath to just push the doorknob out a little bit and give it a little bit more dimension. And for the inside of the door, it's pretty much the same thing, except I added 2 smaller pieces of poster board layered together here. And that is going to mimic a turn knob that a lot of houses have on the inside doorknob. While the door handles are drying in place, I'm going to take one of the foam board pieces that I cut to 12.5 inches by 8 inches and start working on the floor. I covered my foam board for the floor and the porch, and for this I'm kind of experimenting, but if you don't want to do the paperboard, you can absolutely continue the scrapbook paper all the way onto the porch half. And if you want to do it on the house, you don't have to do the paperboard method that I'm doing. Just make your life simple and cover it in scrapbook paper. For my house, the side with the scrapbook paper is going to be the floor for the inside, and the paperboard is for the outside. So on the 8-inch side, I measured down 4¼ inches, and that's where I stopped my scrapbook paper. And then I continued with the paperboard here. And I actually did some little nail holes. Hopefully those show up when I go to paint. Now to glue the walls of the house to the floor and porch, I'm going to line up my shorter side walls, the 4-inch walls, to the edge of my floor. And that should get me right to the edge of the porch. So I'll glue it here and along the front until we get to the door, and make sure you do not glue your door in place. And then I'll glue here and then on the other side wall. And when we get to the other side, I have to remember to just glue this short wall down and not this back wall, because I need that to be able to swing open and close. I was going to glue the walls to the floor off camera, and then I thought I probably should show them this because I was struggling with how I was going to do this. I finally decided I was going to glue this wall in place, which I've already done. And I figured out where my door is. I made some marks on my floor. So now, since my walls can still move, I can swing it back. I can see my marks where I need to stop my glue. So I'll run some glue on this line, stop for the door, come over here, put some more glue, and I can swing my door into place like that, or the wall with the door into place. Let that dry. Hopefully I get it exactly where I want it before the glue dries, because I am using hot glue. And then I can put my glue here on the floor and swing the other wall into place. Hopefully that works. So it worked. I have the walls glued in place. And something that I just realized, and I'll try to put it at the beginning of the video when I'm editing, is to remind you guys that the measurements I gave for the door are slightly off. I should have had trimmed that down a little bit, because even though it still opens, it's hitting the floor. So I should have trimmed it down just a little bit. So just keep that in mind. It still works, but I just don't like how it's rubbing against the floor. The next thing I'm going to do is cover up these corners where you can still see the white of the foam board. I'm going to take some strips of paperboard. These are cut to a 1/2 inch wide. And I'm going to glue them in place like this so you won't see that white. For the next part, we're going to take those 2 triangles and cover one side with some paperboard. Now you can use scrapbook paper for this if you want to. And I did take a 1/4 inch thick strip and trim it out as well, just to add a little bit of extra dimension to it. And we're going to glue these to our other piece of foam board that is 12.5 by 8 inches. And I drew a line where the center is. Take one of my triangles and center it on that line. And I could have made my triangle a little bit longer. Now I'll glue that in place, and then I'll glue the other triangle on the other side. So I have both of my triangles glued on, and now I'm going to take my 2 8¼ inches by 6¼ inch pieces, and those are going to sit like this. And as I'm thinking about this, I've decided I'm going to make a change. But you don't have to do this if you don't want to. You can just glue these in place like this, and you're good to go. Now I did make mine long enough to where I'm going to have some overhang in the front. So this is the nicer side of the 2 triangles. So I'm going to use this as my front, and I wanted a little overhang. So I'm going to push these forward some, and that'll give me a overhang towards the front. But something else I'm going to change is, if you've been with my channel for a while, you may remember when I made the church, I made this portion of the roof completely removable. I can just take it off, open the church, and you can see inside of it. And I also made that portion of the roof where one side opened, and I can use it as storage, or later if I wanted to go back and add lights, I would have access to the ceiling. For this one, I can't really make this a separate part. It needs to be glued in place, but I do think I want to leave one side where I can access it. And if I would have been thinking ahead, instead of cutting these 2 pieces apart, I would have just scored down the middle, and that way they would have still been attached and been able to fold. But because I didn't do that, I'm going to have to use some paper and glue these 2 pieces together. So I have the very top of the roof on, and it worked out. The glue is still a little wet. I used Mod Podge because I wanted a pretty strong bond with the paper, but this side I didn't glue down, and I can open it and do whatever I need to do in here, or store smaller items for the house inside of this. On the back of it, it is pretty flush, and I was able to create an overhang in the front. Now, if you don't want to overhang, or if you want to overhang in the back as well, you can just adjust the width of your pieces. For the roof shingles, I'm using paperboard. I cut strips that were 1 inch in width, and then I went along the strip, and every 1 inch I cut out a notch. And I'll lay it like this, probably have it hanging off just a little bit, and then I'll go in with another strip and offset it so all of the little cuts are not exactly over each other. You don't want them like this, so you want it offset just a little bit. My roof is done, and this side can still open, and I'm going to use this side as my front, so I did leave a little bit of an overhang. I'm just going to take our house, make sure that back wall is open because I don't want to glue that down, and I'm going to glue it to where it's flush with this side wall. So I'll glue this side wall, the front wall, and the other short side wall, and then we'll have this space over here to hang over the porch. So the roof is glued in place and it looks pretty good. So here it is from the side. And when you turn it around to the back, this is what it looks like open and when it's closed. Now I can take the 4 strips of foam board that I cut to 13 inches long, and I'm going to use those as my supports. So I glue 2 together and that creates 1 support, and the other 2 create the other support, and I'll glue those in place like this. So now I'm going to put some railing here on the side. I'm going to leave the front open, that way it'll be easier to film the front of the house with the dolls on it. But I just realized I messed up here. I wasn't paying attention, and when I glued this in place, I didn't leave myself enough space on the edge, because my original idea was to glue these 3.5 by 1 inch strips like this. And now I can't really do that. There's not enough space, so I'm going to have to glue it on the other side and just hope it looks good. I have that piece in place, and now I'm going to take 3 of these 6 by 1/2 inch strips and glue those in place like this. So I'll have 3 going across like that. Now I'll take another one of the shorter strips and put it across the top. And it is hitting the window trim on the other side, but I don't have a better option because I did not leave myself enough space on this side to make it work out. I finished the railing on the other side, and I like the way it came out. My original plan, I was going to use 4 of the 6-inch strips on each side, but I decided only to use 3. I think it looks cleaner, so I do have these 2 left over, and I'll just put them in my scrap pile. Now I'm going to start painting everything, and I'm going for a wood look. So everything, even the foam board, is going to get covered in black paint first, and then I'll start layering on my brown paint and some lighter colors. And if you want your house to be a different color, of course, just go with what you feel like. Here's what the house is looking like with the black paint. The only place I gave a good coverage with the black was the foam board and the roof. The rest of it, I went pretty sparse. You can still see the brown from the paperboard, and I wanted that because I'm going to make this building look weathered, so it didn't have to be perfect. And on the inside, I did make sure to cover my floor. I probably should have covered the entire thing, but this piece of paper worked. I just slid it underneath the door, so when I was painting, it would protect the floor on the inside of the house. So I have a little bit of brown, and I've already started. And I didn't clean my brush off. I still have some black paint on it, but I'm just going to go over it really lightly with the brown until I get the look that I want. So some areas will be darker, and then it will lighten up as I do more strokes. I'm done dry brushing the brown paint on the house, and I really like the way this is looking. The only thing is the foam board. It looks a lot different than the rest of the house because I didn't have that paperboard underneath it to give me the lighter brown. So I'm going to dry brush some antique white on, and hopefully that helps blend it a little bit more. So I have a little bit of the antique white on my brush. You can see I still have the brown and black on there as well. So I'm just going to brush it on. I think the railing matches the house a lot better now. I just went back and forth between the brown, white, and black, just dry brushing it on until I got the look that I wanted. And I know that my window panes are very white compared to the rest of the house, but I do plan to repaint this later. This was just an experiment right now for me to see if I could get the look of aged wood. So guys, I lost some audio to this section. I'm talking about the doorknobs. I used gold paint, and then I brushed on some black to tone the gold down and give it an aged look. And I lost the footage of me explaining that I did have to go over the plank lines with black just to deepen those lines so it'll pop out a little bit more. Adding the black paint definitely helped these lines pop out a lot more. And here's what the floor looks like. And I'm not completely in love with the floor, but I'm going to leave it for now. For the roof, I'm going to brush on a little bit of that antique white and also some green. So I have the antique white on and it's very light, and then I went in with some patches of green, but I want to tone that green down a little bit, so I'm going to go over it with some black paint. So I lightly brushed on the black paint, and I think it helped tone that green down a lot. It looks a lot better to me, so I'm going to go with this and do it on the other side. Tanya, are you sure this is the right place? Yeah, Roger said it was a fixer-upper. It looks more like a tear-downer. And what's with all the mushrooms? Forget the mushrooms. I'm wondering what's with all the cats. Please, come in. I've been waiting for you. No thank you. Yeah, that's a no for me too. Let's get out of here before we end up in some horror movie. Wait, A made tea. Yeah, that's still a no for us. And I have donuts from that new shop downtown. Well, Sharon, we did drive all the way here, so we might as well check the place out. I know, right? And it would be so rude of us to make the creepy voice eat all of those donuts alone. And we are definitely not rude people. You do have your taser with you, right? Yep, and it's fully charged. I'm so glad I took the time to experiment and build this. This is going to help me out so much when I go to build the other houses for the village. And to make this, it was 2 pieces of foam board from the Dollar Tree, and I did end up with some leftover pieces, so that was pretty good. But exactly 2 pieces of Dollar Tree foam board worked great for this. And I think for the paperboard, I used 2 pizza boxes and 3 of the family size cereal boxes because I had to cut out so much paperboard for the roof and to cover everything. There are some things about this design that I like and some that I don't like. The first thing is the overall size. I tend to make things a little bit bigger than I was meaning to, and this one I stuck to my base of 12 inches by 8 inches. It might be a little over because of the overhang of the roof, but it's basically the size that I told myself to stick to. And the overall look of the house or style of the house is pretty good. I can always tweak this, like move the door over to the side, have a larger window. I can also change up the porch railing here. So there's a lot of potential with this design. Another thing I like about this house is I have quite a bit of storage space with the space in the roof and the footprint in the inside with the, I think it's 12 inches by 4 inches inside of the house when it's closed. That's a pretty good amount of storage space, and when I open it up, of course it's going to look a lot bigger. And I didn't add a floor extension inside on purpose because this was just an experimental house and I can always add a floor extension without any issue, so I wasn't worried about that. Now, some things that I dislike or I feel like I could have improved on was the overall paint job. With the scoring of the paperboard to make the planks, that just didn't work out as well for me. I still had to go back over with the black paint to make those stand out. So I got to go back to the drawing board and see where I went wrong with that. Now, I do think the paint job of making the wood look older was okay. I can tweak that a little bit too, but that came out better than I thought. Another thing that I would probably change, especially for the interior side, is the paperboard I use for the door. Paint it separately and then attach it because I was so worried about getting paint on the white trim of the door on the inside. That was just a headache. And I did manage to do it and it worked out just fine. But in the future, that might just be the easiest thing to do is paint it separately. Something else I'll probably change in the future, it works, but I don't know if it's the best method to do, is these 2 front corners where I folded the foam board to just make the room. I don't think I'll do that in the future. I'll just cut those and glue them back together that would probably give me a stronger bond. But the back wall that swings open, I'll definitely just score that and leave that attached. That works out just fine. And if you're wondering what a Ken doll will look like in this diorama, there is more than enough space for him. You can see the door is taller than he is, so he can fit through it just fine. And there's a lot of head space in the porch ceiling and on the interior ceiling. So my friends, that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions about anything in this video, please leave it in the comments below. I will try my best to answer your questions. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. I'll see you next time, my friends. Bye-bye.